Welcome to Module 6. We are on page 8 of the outline and getting ready to talk about new issues. Several terms, of course. It should be no surprise that we start out with some terminology that's involved in each of these segments, and you need to know these terms. Again, a good exercise is to just kind of go back over and just read the terms and anything that you need to brush up on in your glossary. Just do that real quickly. I break it into several different chunks, so because it's a terminally boring exercise, but it's very valuable for you to do so. All right. So anyway, let's talk about the new issue market, and what we're talking about when we talk about the new issue market in general is investment banking. I tell you, I can't remember the movie. But somebody, they needed to give the guy a real important job. So they said, oh yeah, he's an investment banker. And then they showed all these big signs, open a savings account with us today. New checking account, we'll give you a toast. I didn't find that at an investment bank. All they do is that they facilitate bringing new securities to market. That's all an investment bank does. And so investment banking describes that new issues and putting it from the issuer into the hands of the public, getting that first fingerprint on those securities. So all primary market trades are over the counter. All primary market trades are over the counter. What happens is, and I'll draw it just really simplified here, is that the issuer uses some type of investment banking firm, a distribution arrangement. I'm just going to put IB for investment bank, and the securities go here to here, and those folks buy them out of the inventory. Okay, so like I say, that's what you've got with all new issues. There is no exchange for new issues. You just couldn't do it. What we have is, let's look at this a little bit in more detail. You have an underwriting syndicate. If I were working for an investment banking firm and I said, hey boss, I just got us a new chunk of business, going to be $500 million. I said, great, we'll give you a great bonus. I said, oh, by the way, I told them that we'd buy it all ourselves with no help. You're going to put $500 million of the company's money at risk, so you're fired. We don't want to do that. So what we're going to do is that we're going to set up a syndicate which works like this, okay? You have somebody's got to lead the thing. And usually the company that, the investment bank that finds the business serves as the manager. But they don't want to put all their money at risk, so what they're going to do is they're going to bring in some partners to help them out, and they're going to make them members of this syndicate, and this will be a fairly small little syndicate. But since they're members of the syndicate, let's read it backwards and let's come up with the title for them, a syndicate member. And so already, I mean, like I say, this is a very small one. I'm spreading my risk 5 ways instead of 1. All right, so then we go from there. Wouldn't it be nice to have some hired guns whose only job in the world was to sell for us? What's the purpose of this thing? To sell this stuff. So yeah, so let's then bring in some help, and we will have a group of investment banking firms that all they do is sell. Since they're a group that sells, let's call them the selling group. And this will go all the way across here. I'm not going to draw all of these, but you guys get the idea. Okay? So that's what we've got, is they're selling agents only. All right, the manager both manages and puts their money at risk. Syndicate members don't manage, but they do put their money at risk. Selling group, again, just read it backwards. It's a bunch of guys that just sell. That's all they do. And so they're just going to get paid commissions for their sales. The types of underwritings that we have include a firm commitment. The commitment we make to the issuer is that we will, in fact, buy everything, period. All of your stuff will get sold, because guess who's going to buy it from you? We will. With the big names, that's what you see. Most of the things that you see, if you ever get a Series 7, for instance, and look at the new issues, the names that you have are going to be firm commitments. You get down to the kind of the lower tier stuff, and you go to some of the others, the best efforts. The syndicate is going to act as an agent. I mean, best efforts itself implies whatever we can do, that's what we'll do, but that's all we can do. And that's all we will do. So we'll serve as your agent. We'll look for buyers for you, and if we find enough to get the whole thing, cool. If we find enough to get 80% of it, that's the best we can do. So anyway, that's a best efforts. There are a couple of little variations on this, an all or none. What happens is that the company says, well, wait a minute, 80%? We got this thing scaled down to really, we need every share sold, we need every bond sold. So if you can't sell them all, then we're just not gonna honor any of them. Because there's no reason for us to, sell a bunch of securities and not have enough money. So all or none, okay? And then minimum maximum. If we get 80% of it, we'll have enough to do everything we need to do. If we get 100% of it, we'll have enough to get the best instead of so-so. We'll have some working capital, some cushion, what have you. But if we go past a certain level, then we're basically just buying flowers for the flower bed. So minimum maximum. That's just another variation, a specific variation of the best efforts. And then the standby we've talked about, that's a specific firm commitment in a rights offering where that underwriter just stays in the wings and cleans up anything that's left over from the rights offering that the existing shareholders don't want. All right, so we go into some of the laws now, and the first one we encounter is the Securities Act of 1933. And I tell you what, when I took these tests, I had all kinds of problems keeping them straight. So I finally just renamed them. I hope you don't mind me renaming the act. I'm going to call this one the Securities Themselves Act of 1933. Because that's what it covers, is the stuff. It doesn't cover anything other than just taking that stuff and getting it out into the hands of the public for the first time. Now, the thing is that 33 is the primary year of the two. You've got the 33 and 34 Act. Well, the primary year covers the primary market activities. So there's another way to keep them straight. Securities Themselves Act of the primary year. It's the Act of Full Disclosure or the Paper Act. It says that all securities must be registered with the SEC, or there has to be some type of an exemption. Those are those exceptional circumstances we talked about several videos back. All right, so we'll go into those, and you'll need to know those. In fact, sometimes knowing the exceptions, the exemptions, that's as important or more important than knowing what the regular rule is. So we'll cover those in detail. Okay, so a registration statement is filed, and basically here's the kind of the timeline that we've got, is that XYZ decides that they need to sell some stocks, some bonds, whatever. And so they're doing their prep work here, here, and finally they've got all this stuff prepared, these documents prepared, and they take it over to the SEC and they file their registration. Okay, in the good old days, before 1933, they didn't have to do anything like this. In fact, what they do is that they say, hey man, we got the greatest thing since sliced bread. What is? I can't tell you. Somebody else is going to hop on it and steal it. They're not going to hop on and steal it. The only stealing is going to go on is stealing your money. The SEC, well, the federal government, Congress said, that's not right. This is just not right. We need to have full disclosure and time for people to look things over and read about the risks as well as the potential returns. And so what happens here is that immediately we will enter into a 20-day minimum cooling off period. Okay, so a minimum of 20 days of a cooling off period in between the filing of that registration statement with the SEC and the actual effective date is what that's going to be called. What can you do? What can you not do? You can distribute a preliminary prospectus. Now, a preliminary prospectus, the nickname for it is a red herring. Okay, it's kind of a pun because we're not really talking about the real thing, we're just throwing this out as a red herring. And the reason that we have the nickname, oops, started with the wrong color there, kind of lose the effect. Okay, the reason we call it that is that you've got, there's the booklet, and it has XYZ, it has what it is, it has da-da-da, who else bringing it to market, okay? And then right up here in red, by law, it says the date of this prospectus is subject to completion, da-da-da. And then down here, it has some other disclosures like, no regulatory body has approved it, it's da-da-da-da-da, okay? Now I'm going to do double duty, and what I'm going to do is to hop ahead a little bit, okay, and just talk about what goes right here. That, on every prospectus in the world, whether preliminary or statutory / final prospectus, okay, that is gonna be the SEC disclaimer. In more or less boilerplate wording, it says that neither the SEC nor any state securities administrator has approved or disapproved these securities, nor have they ruled with regard to completeness or truthfulness of the statements contained herein. Now, if you lie to folks, you're a snake in the grass. But if you lie about this, what that continues on to say is, any representation to the contrary is a criminal offense. So if you lie about that, you're a crook, you're a crime. You committed a crime, okay? That's the SEC disclaimer. And like I said, it's on every prospectus in the world. So anyway, my wording may not be exactly correct, but it's close enough for our purposes, all right? But that's why they call it a red herring. That's a preliminary prospectus. There are certain things that you cannot know during this period. Like, for instance, what's the supply and demand going to look like? I don't know. Well, therefore, what's the pricing going to look like? I'm not sure. If it's a bond, what are the interest rates going to do? Really can't tell. So that pricing information, how many will we be able to sell? There are certain cases where you can actually sell more than what is just the face amount that's on the, or not the face amount, but the total amount that they're projecting, the base amount, I guess I should call it, on the prospectus. So all those things are variables. When is this day going to come? I don't know. Now, one of the things we're going to do during this time period is that we're also going to hold a due diligence meeting. We're going to do that just before, this date's going to be called the effective date. That's when the SEC says, well, all the papers are in order, we don't have any more questions. If you sell the stuff, well, you won't go to jail, it's legal. You're now allowed to sell it. That's it, that's all they say, okay? When is the effective date going to be? If this is 20 days or over, then I'm not sure. We're going to have this right about there, so I don't have the date of the due diligence meeting in the preliminary prospectus. Because I don't know when the effective date's going to be. And another thing I can do is that I can accept indications of interest, or IOIs. They're not binding on either the broker-dealer, the investment banker, or the customer. And I've seen it both ways, where issues have been withdrawn. I've seen it where customers have called me up and say, you know, can I have a little bit of buyer's remorse? Too late to pull out? Nope. No problem. No problem at all. Okay. During the cooling off period, though, what can you not do? Well, you cannot, I call it remember when there was a big scare about SARS? I can't remember what SARS stands for anymore, but everybody's wearing these, real big in the Far East, you know, like in Hong Kong, everybody had these masks on. We want to avoid SARS. So we don't want to sell, advertise, recommend, or solicit those securities. Any of these types of activities have to be done by means of the preliminary prospectus, which is just a disclosure document. That's it. And no, you cannot mark on the preliminary prospectus. You can't open it to page 7, circle something, put a sticky note, hey, pay attention. No, you send it just as is, because it's strictly a disclosure document to allow that customer, that potential customer, to weigh the risks and the potential rewards. See if it's suitable. Like I said, cooling off period is a very, very good term. So, like I say, during the cooling off period, you can't sell, advertise, recommend, or solicit the issue. There's no price, effective date, we don't know what it's going to be. There's no due diligence meeting date in the red herring or preliminary prospectus. The final prospectus then is prepared on the effective date. Because we know all that stuff. It's now on the effective date. It's legal for us to sell that. And so we do. And we know how much we sold it for, and we know how much there was, and we know when it was. And so we then can finish all those blank spaces in the preliminary prospectus and prepare the final or statutory prospectus and then it has to be sent with or prior to the confirmation to the customer. Now, with the advent of the internet, if you've got access to the internet and certain agreements you have to do, okay, access equals delivery. So if we post it out on the web, and you have an internet hookup and agree to look there to get it, then you're considered to have received it. So anyway, that's, like I say, technology is making it a lot easier. You can have tombstone ads, and tombstone ads basically just announce the offering. In fact, they say that they're not an offer to sell or solicitation of an offer to buy. It's just an announcement. And the reason they're called tombstone ads is they kind of look like a tombstone. You've got the issuer, XYZ, okay, what they're selling, okay? Then you've got that little disclaimer, this is neither an offer to sell nor solicitation of an offer to buy this security. Such offer is made only by means of the preliminary prospectus. A prospectus may be obtained by contacting the manager, in smaller type, the syndicate members, in alphabetical order, and then in even smaller type, the selling group, in alphabetical order. Okay. Don't do this a lot anymore because it's so expensive. But in any event, that's a tombstone ad. Now, there are mutual fund, quote unquote, tombstone ads. They're totally different from this. This talks about corporate securities. All right, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Okay, and so let's go ahead, and what we'll do is let's talk about exempt securities, and then we'll wrap up and take a little break on this section. Okay, so exempt securities. We're talking about, let's see, exempt means does not apply. So the registration rules do not apply. The advertising rules do not apply. Fraud rules apply to everything. I don't care who you are, what you're selling, who you're selling to. If there's fraud involved, it's fraud. And you just can't do it. So anyway, exempt securities, these are exempt from registration and advertising regulations. And the way that I remember it is a government regulator's list of charities is short. It's kind of funny to put that in, but you'll need to remember what it is. Let's see what we're talking about, okay? Just write the sentence down this way. So you got a government regulators list of charities is short. So what do we mean by this? We mean that if it's a governmental issuer, treasuries, agencies, municipals, those will never go through registration because they're exempt from registration. You'll never see a prospectus on a treasury. In fact, even municipals, they have a disclosure document, but it's not called a prospectus. They're exempt. You can advertise if you want to. So a governmental issuer, a regulator. If there was a regulator in place in 1933, why have double regulation? So banks. Now here, don't think about Bank of America, okay? I mean, God bless them, it's a good company. What I want you to think about is the First State Bank of the smallest town in your state, okay? So think about that. They've got one branch, okay? Guy set it up. He's one of, he and four of his buddies set it up 40 years ago, and they just, what do they offer? Checking, savings, car loans, ag loans, auto loan, mortgages, maybe, personal loans, safe deposit boxes, and they say CDs. I'm running out. Okay, that's a bank. Okay, Bank of America is actually a holding company. That's a company, read it backwards, that's a company that holds all the stock of operating companies. All right, so it doesn't apply to holding companies. So you got banks, you got common carriers. So like railroads, okay? For those equipment trust certificates specifically, remember those back from the debt, okay? The insurance companies also in this. Insurance companies are state regulated. Right. And then charities or nonprofits. So church bonds. Also fraternal organizations. you get a little bit of overlap between your fraternal organizations and insurance products. So anyway, but still, you know, just an easy way to remember it. And then short-term, maximum of 270 days. Okay, so we've got commercial paper. Remember, that's the short-term corporate borrowing. Bankers' acceptances, which facilitates import-export trade. Okay. Now, treasury bills. Treasury bills is not down here. Because you see, treasury bills are right up here. They're governmental issuers. So you don't have to put them down there because they'd be putting them on there twice. So, if it's a governmental issuer, if in 1933 there was a regulator already in place, if it's a charity, if it's short-term corporate paper, then those are going to be exempt from registration. They're going to be exempt from advertising requirements. Never, ever, ever exempt from fraud rules. And good probability of having some questions on exempt securities, and then what we'll pick up on with the next video, exempt transactions. And it's important to know the difference between the two. So let's go ahead and take a break here, and then we'll come back and pick up some of the exempt transactions here in a second.